Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes. We in compliance?
Yes, we are.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there any correspondence?
Yes, I received communication on a variety of topics that were either discussed or addressed to the appropriate personnel. Especially today, I received a number of emails and phone calls in regards to the bus situation, rightfully so, and I will certainly discuss that during my report as well.
Do you have any correspondence? No. Okay. Agenda modifications?
Yes, there are a number of agenda modifications. There is an addition to the donations. There is a new number 16. The old 16 is now 17. There is a new number 18. There is an addition to P19D, change of contract. There is an addition to P19F6, substitute cafeteria. There is a new P19F7, an addition to P20A10, substitute cafeteria, a new P20A11, housekeeper, and therefore the old 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 will now become 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23.
Thank you. That brings us to our soaring above. Yes. Do you want me to come up there with you? Sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Mr. Mark, oh, thank you. Soaring Eagle, or I'm sorry, that's the next one. Soaring Above was created to honor and recognize individuals that support our district in outstanding ways, from alumni to current staff, and extending to community members that support the education of our students. We have many invaluable supporters who go above and beyond to keep our district strong. We will be recognizing 2 outstanding supporters each year, one will be this evening, and share their stories in our buildings and with the community at large. Our goal is to shine a light on those who have helped to positively impact our district and have served as great role models for our students. We will announce and highlight these individuals at a board meeting and present them or their family with a poster, and a second one will be hung in the main hall here, just right outside the high school main alley or main hallway, to be displayed so that our families along with visitors can read more about these outstanding individuals. While I personally have never had the chance to meet our first recipient,
His name is certainly one I've heard repeatedly over the past 2 years. So at this time, I would like to invite Mr. Mark Winchell to come up and share a little bit about this amazing person.
Good evening. I'm honored to stand here tonight and say a few words about my good friend Mark Brace. Mark was truly a one-of-a-kind and the greatest man I've ever known. I was fortunate enough to call him my friend and be around him for nearly 25 years. Mark came to Geneva his sophomore year in high school and instantly made an impact on everyone he met. His wit and his charm and his infectious humor was unlike anyone we'd ever met before. He was genuine, authentic, and fiercely devoted to his family and friends. Mark and I had the opportunity to play football with each other here at Geneva and compete against each other at the collegiate level. We stood next to each other at our wedding ceremonies and coached each other's children in youth sports. A diagnosis of stage 4 cancer never dampened Mark's unbridled optimism or his zest for life. With a pick line installed and a chemo bag in tow, you could find Mark running up and down the hardwood courts at the Geneva Rec Center, coaching youth basketball, and in the dugouts at Carrier Field, coaching girls softball. On Friday nights, he could be found in the Eagles locker room giving words of motivation and encouragement to the football team. When you asked Mark how he was doing, he always gave the biggest smile, and he said, if I was doing any better, I'd be you. Mark created his own gravity, and he pulled us all in close. When I heard that Mark was going to be the first person inducted into the Soaring Eagle or Soaring Above Club, I started to think about what that meant. The first of anything is truly special, and it is an honor, but it carries a heavy responsibility. The first stone laid in a foundation of a cathedral or stadium is often called the cornerstone. It's specifically chosen for its unique characteristics and its integrity. It must be strong and true. It must be able to withstand pressure and time. The single most important piece is something larger than itself, because every other stone that follows depends on that cornerstone. A great monument can only stand if the cornerstone is chosen perfectly, and I couldn't think of a better cornerstone to build this Hall of Fame upon than Mark Brace. For those that knew him well will never forget what he meant to us. I'm honored and thankful to have shared 25 years of friendship with Mark and the joy and the happiness that he poured into our lives and how he built us up so we could be successful. It was a style truly unique to Mark. Cora, Vita, and Max, someday soon you'll walk the halls of Geneva High School and you'll pass the Soaring Above Hall. I want you to know the cornerstone in that foundation is your father, Mark. He was chosen first because he represents the best in all of us. He'll make sure the legacy of kindness, compassion, athletics, and community pride is held in the highest regard, and he'll be the standard for all of those who are selected to represent the best our community has to offer in the future. Thank you for honoring Mark and what he meant to all of us here tonight.
Thanks, Mark. At this time, if Livia Brace and her mother-in-law, Denise Brace, can come up here, we would like to present you with the first Soaring Above Award. So this is the second one, which is the same copy of it. This is the one that will start the wall that we'll dedicate outside of the auditorium. So next up, we have our recognition of the Soaring Eagles. This is a program, if you recall, that recognizes both students and staff. This was implemented last school year, and for all who receive this award, they get their picture taken with Tuffy, they get a Soaring Eagle backsack, a positive phone call home, and they get their picture posted on our district social media to celebrate the fact that they're a Soaring Eagle. Additionally, at this time, the Board of Education would also like to recognize them and present them with a certificate. So if you recall, we did this back in January. So in January, we recognized the first semester Soaring Eagles, and at this time, we'll recognize all of the second semester Soaring Eagles that are present this evening. So in a moment, for those of you that were able to attend this evening, I would ask that you sort of line up along the wall on this aisle. And when I call your name, Mr. Riley, the Assistant Superintendent, will escort you up to the stage. You'll walk across. Board President, Mrs. Ortiz, will present you with your certificate. We'll pause to get your photo, and we'll get that photo back to the family. And then each board member and administrator would like to congratulate you as well. So at this time, if I can have the board members and administrators come onto the stage. If you are present and you are a Soaring Eagle this evening, if you could, again, can line up along the wall here on my left side, and then we will start calling up the winners. And I am going to call the names of those that I didn't get a response from either way, just so that if they are here this evening, they will be recognized. For those who were not able to be here this evening, I will get their certificates to them as well. Good. All right, starting in January, our Soaring Eagles who are present from GPS, we had third grader Flynn Cash. Congratulations. She's going to give you a certificate. You want to turn around. We're going to take a quick picture first before you go down the line. First one's not. Everyone wants to congratulate you. Next, seventh grader from the middle school, Jaden Cintron, was chosen by Miss Koss. And from the high school for January, we had freshman Brooklyn Phillips. All right, for the month of February, starting at Austenburg, we had second grader Riley Cosper. Okay, we'll get that to Riley. From GPS, we also had a second grader, and that was Molly Dryden. Next, from the middle school, sixth grader Gabriella Williams. For the month of March, starting at Austenburg, fourth grader Mackenzie Brunson. From Cork Elementary, first grader Aiden Cantor. At GPS, kindergartner Brady Madrino. For the month of April, at Austinburg, we had third grader John Bernardo. From Cork Elementary, second grader Caden Wilson. Our next recipient from, she was recognized at GPS, but she is at all of our elementaries, music teacher Mrs. Stowell. And lastly, sixth grader from the middle school, also in the month of April, was Alex Vlasov. Thank you again, and congratulations to all of the Soaring Eagles. If we can give them another round of applause.
still sharing. You have them, okay. Oh, thank you. Is everybody ready? Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
A motion to approve the treasurer's financial report.
Move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
A motion to approve the invoices.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler.
Yes.
The informational items.
You see a number of donations listed, 2 scholarships. One is an annual one from the Fraternal Order of Eagles that benefits 4 graduating seniors. And at the bottom is a new one from Christine Mahalik for the Michael Mahalik Memorial Scholarship that will give an award to 3 graduating seniors. In addition, a couple donations from After School Discovery for Geneva High School's participation in the 2023 Spring Wildflower Competition and the Fall Tree. And please note that those should be $50 each. 150 and 100 was from last year. And then there was a Wurlitzer piano valued at $600 from Sonia White in Johnstown, Ohio to Ostenburg Elementary. And we have Mrs. Stowell to thank for securing that donation.
Thank you. That brings us to the legislative report.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so Governor DeWine's biennial budget is now in its 8th hearing and it's in the Senate. It has passed the House, so now the Senate has to do the same process before they pass it, so that's where we are, halfway done. Ohio House Primary and Secondary Education Committee heard testimony on HB 103, which would establish the Ohio Social Studies Standards Task Force to develop new social studies academic standards for use beginning with the 24-25 school year. And I have a question about that. Should I do it now or later? Why do we just buy a new curriculum and then, did we know this was coming, I guess is my question. Because if they're gonna change the standards, will the new one we just bought still meet them?
So it has not passed yet, as you noted, and if it does, based on the prior changes when they've done curriculum changes, have not been substantial in nature when it comes to content.
Oh, okay, perfect, thank you. HB 117 passed, excuse me, out of committee, and next goes to the floor for a vote. It would eliminate retention under the 3rd grade reading guarantee and expand the grades for which intensive reading intervention is provided. The bill also modifies the English language arts assessment to be administered once in the 3rd grade and expands the inclusion of phonics and learning standards. And the catchphrase there that we're hearing about is the science of reading, and the science is essentially phonics. HB 8 had a 4th hearing. The bill would enact the Parents' Bill of Rights to require public schools to adopt a policy on parental notification regarding student health and well-being and instructional materials with sexually explicit content. The committee passed HB 6, which would enact the Save Women's Sports Act. The bill would require schools, state institutions of higher education, and private colleges to designate separate single-sex teams and sports for each sex. The House Commerce and Labor Committee passed Senate Bill 30, which would allow a person aged 14 or 15 to be employed between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. during the school year if the person has parental or legal guardian consent. The committee also passed Senate Concurrent Resolution 2, which urges Congress to make changes to the Fair Labor Standards Act to allow a person under 16 to be employed during the school year. So it's the way I understand it, it's a twofold process that both the House and the Senate have to do, so they both did one this month. House Pensions Committee, the committee held its 2nd hearing on HB 146, which would require the school employees retirement board to establish the contribution-based benefit cap, a limit on the retirement allowance a member may receive. There's a lot of jargon about the calculation of that and what that cap would be, depending on years of service, depending on current income and current contribution. I didn't include any of that, but I have it if you need it. Shoot me an email.
They're changing the calculation?
They are.
Okay.
The House Economic and Workforce Development Committee held the fourth hearing on SB1. That's the one that we want, that some want to change the Ohio Department of Education into the Department of Education and Workforce. So it is still working, chugging along. Some new bills were introduced. HB 164 establishes the Foster to College Scholarship Program. The bill requires the Department of Education to hire a full-time school foster care liaison and make sure an appropriation for the Foster to College Scholarship Program gets funded. The Senate unanimously passed Senate Bill 49. This is the one that would enact the Religious Expression Days, or RED Act, and require school boards to adopt a policy providing students with religious accommodations for up to 3 days. So now the bill just awaits Governor DeWine's signature. The House Primary and Secondary Education Committee had sponsored testimony on HB 38. This would allow school districts to permit students to take up to 3 mental health days away from school each year. The committee held a third hearing on HB 11. This would establish the backpack scholarship program beginning in 23-24. The bill would also repeal the Education Choice Voucher Program and the Cleveland Voucher Program. Those would expire July 1st of 24. House Health Provider Services passed HB 47, which would require the placement of automated external defibrillators, ADEs, in each public and chartered non-public school. All the schools I go in already have an AED, but apparently it wasn't required or state required. I'm not sure what they've added, but so it's legislation to require those in all public, chartered, and non-public schools. And last but not least, SB 112 was introduced, and this would require school buildings to comply with national life safety standards, and to name this act the Ohio Childhood Safety Act. It has been referred to the Senate Education Committee for study and proponent and opponent testimony. That's all I have. Thank you all.
Thank you. That brings us to the ATEC report.
Yes, the May meeting was held last Monday, May 15th. We heard a very interesting presentation by the ATEC Robobot team, which took first place in the regional competition. We were shown videos of some of the competitions and then shown the inner workings of the robot, while each student described their contribution to the project. The team will travel to Pittsburgh to compete in the national competition on Friday and Saturday at Rosedale Technical College, and one of the competitors is a college team from Kansas State. There were 4 young men and 1 young lady on the team. A very talented young lady is a Geneva student named Louisa Sistek. She is in the Engineering Academy at ATEC, specializing in architectural design and engineering program. She's 1 year into her pilot training program and hopes to become a private pilot by next year. Certainly a big credit to Geneva. ATEC received an $11,000 grant from the Skills Program. It's to provide training in preparing students for what to expect on the job. The program chosen was from the Mike Rowe Works Foundation. Many of you may be familiar with Mike Rowe from the Dirty Jobs program on TV. He started his career as an opera singer when he joined the Baltimore Opera to get, quote, a union card and meet girls. By his account, he was successful in both when he appeared in Rigoletto. As he recalls it, he spent many years earning enough money to support himself by doing minimal work, and in the process developed a talent for talking for long periods of time and saying virtually nothing. By then, to his complete surprise, he pitched a show to a TV producer, and the producer loved it and ordered 39 shows. Mike had to really go to work, and he did it with a vengeance, and that show was Dirty Jobs. What came out of his rather serendipitous background was a program to help young people find their place and be successful in it. He started with Mike Rowe Works Foundation, which awards scholarships to students in the skilled trades. He also put together the Sweat Pledge. And I think everybody can get a little bit of something out of this. It reads as follows. By the way, SWEAT stands for Skill and Work Ethic Aren't Taboo. Number one, I believe that I have hit the greatest lottery of all time. I'm alive, I walk the earth, I live in America. Above all things, I am grateful. Number two, I believe that I am entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, nothing more. I also understand that happiness and the pursuit of happiness are not the same thing. Number three, I believe there is no such thing as a bad job. I believe that all jobs are opportunities, and it's up to me to make the best of them. And number four, I do not follow my passion. I bring it with me. I believe that any job can be done with passion and enthusiasm. Number four, I deplore debt and do all I can to avoid it. I would rather live in a tent and eat beans than borrow money to pay for a lifestyle I can't afford. Number six, I believe that my safety is my responsibility. I understand that being in compliance doesn't necessarily mean I'm out of danger. 7, I believe the best way to distinguish myself at work is to show up early, stay late, and cheerfully volunteer for every crappy task there is. Number 8, I believe the most annoying sounds in the world are whining and complaining. I will never make them. If I am unhappy at my work, I will either find a new job or find a way to be happy. Number 9, I believe that my education is my responsibility and absolutely critical to my success. I am resolved to learn as much as I can from whatever source is available to me. I will never stop learning and understand that library cards are free. 10, I believe that I am a product of my choices, not my circumstances. I will never blame anyone for my shortcomings or the challenges I face, and I will never accept the credit for something I didn't do. 11, I understand the world is not fair, and I'm okay with that. I do not resent the success of others. And 12, I believe that all people are created equal. I also believe that all people make choices. Some choose to be lazy, some choose to sleep in. I choose to work my butt off. So this program will be starting. He has taken basically those items from the Sweat Pledge and turned it into videos and working situations and showing how to apply that attitude and how it will help them succeed on the job. As a reminder, the Horticulture Department is in the middle of their annual plant sale. It'll be held at the school until this Friday, the 19th, and the hours from 11:30 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. Plants can also be ordered online. The proposal was sent in for a section of the Ohio budget that is to pay for expansion of technical schools across the state. $200 million was earmarked in the original budget. It's been knocked down to $100 million, but they are hoping it will be bumped back up before the budget passes. All the tech schools in the state who wanted some of this funding had to submit requests, and they gave a very narrow window to provide the information. The board first heard of this opportunity at the April board meeting, and by the May board meeting, 134 pages of detailed drawings, community support letters, statistics for the past several years on enrollment numbers, including the number of those who were shut out of programs due to lack of space, pictures of the current facilities, and the public need for increased services were all sent to Columbus. In all, 59 tech schools have submitted requests for almost $470 million. Announcement of who will receive what will be made on July 1st. They have to wait until after the budget is completed so they know how much they have to give out. We were lucky since we were already discussing expansion, and the architects had done a preliminary study, which enabled us to concentrate on other aspects of the request. And finally, the senior awards will be on May 26th at 7 p.m. at Lakeside High School.
Thank you. That brings us to the administrative reports.
Yes, we will begin first this evening with Mr. Riley.
Good evening, everyone. So, and my board report's relatively short this evening. However, just kind of a testing update. I listed for the board all of the most of the tests that we have gone through as a district this school year. I think sometimes as we start off the school year with maybe the third grade reading test at the beginning of the school year, we forget that we did that in October when we're in May and we're doing the advanced placement tests. And we do the ACT test in the wintertime, and we do the spring assessments. I think sometimes we forget about all that. So it's just a testing season we think runs in the spring. It actually runs year-round. So also the results for the districts, May 16th, which was yesterday, we did receive the online math, science, and social studies scores. The online ELA for the districts throughout the state will not come until May 22nd. And then we get some other tests that roll in over the span of the next week or next month and a half or so. What I did provide to the board was a couple of documents that are right after the agenda, actually, or in my part, I should say, and it says preliminary on them because we have gotten some results back yet, but we have not gotten our ELA results, and we will continue to get some results coming in over the next month and a half, 2 months, as we get things cleaned up from the state and whatnot. But just to point out just a few items, of the 13 released indicators so far, which has been in English, or excuse me, which has been in math, science, and social studies, we have increased in 8 out of those 13, and reduced in 4 of them, or decreased, I should say. And then one of the indicators was very similar to last school year. Also, when you look at the next page, which compares our district right now to the state of Ohio, 9 of the 13 released indicators, we are above state average. So there's some growth that's kind of going across the district, and each one of the buildings has been looking at theirs in the last 24 hours. We're still trying to dissect everything and exactly figure out what it all entails, but we'll be doing that over the next couple of months. Moving forward, the gifted updates. Back in February, we did the COGAT and the Iowa test for our 2nd and 5th grade students. Very shortly in May here, early May, we got the results back. We did the identified screening scores. And at that point in time, we administered a Gates test. We're doing some reassessments of some of the students and things like that. So the last document that I've attached that does not say preliminary, even though we're still working our way through this, kind of gives you an update of where we stand as a district right now with the gifted programs gifted students that have just happened. We did qualify 21 students in 5th grade, or excuse me, 2nd grade, and 15 in 5th grade. Of those 21 students, 4 of them actually identified in 2 areas, which was kind of neat. And in the 5th grade, 5 identified in 2 areas. I broke down the subject areas that are below there in terms of math, reading, science, social studies, superior cog, creative thinking, so you kind of have a breakdown right now of kind of where things are standing. And currently the enrollment, I did provide that earlier in the school year. That's the enrollment, again, for what we're seeing district-wide. So these new students have just now been newly identified, will come into the mix here next school year. So looking forward to working with them as we move forward. The DLT did complete our information with the one plan, as we've been talking about for the last few months, and the Wellness Committee is doing currently a physical fitness challenge. We did the mental health challenge earlier on during the end in April. We had 56 employees participated, and they did win. 17 staff members were selected to win various sessions at the Himalayan Salt Cave over in Mentor. So far, we've got 39 staff members that have done all 3, which was kind of neat along the way. And I guess I was in my reports with some appreciations. I was thinking about this, a couple weeks ago. It was Secretary's Week or Administrative Professionals Week, and sometimes our administrative professionals, they are truly professionals, and they are the first people that contact families when they come to the door. The students sometimes in the morning, they greet visitors as they come in, And sometimes they're also the recipients of phone calls. And you never know what's going to be on the other end of the phone call. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's challenging, but they all district-wide handle things very, very well. So kudos to the secretaries on that aspect. And the last part is really congrats to the class of 2023. I have appreciated, in just my short time here, all that they have done, and you can kind of see every class that kind of moves through a building leaves their legacy. And they are no doubt going to be leaving a wonderful legacy kind of moving forward for those students that are below. To them, it may have seemed like a really long journey to get here, but to families and friends and folks, it went by in the blink of an eye. So congrats to the class of 2023, and I do appreciate everything they've been done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Mrs. Brzezinko.
Thank you. The kindergarten classes at Osterberg Elementary have been learning all about bees this month. The students have read several fiction and nonfiction books, such as Winnie the Pooh and The Honey Tree. Other great activities the students have been working on are creating an informational web that was used to write about the honeybees, adding and subtracting bees in a hive, completing life cycle diagrams, and creating honeybee art projects. As a building goal, we concentrate on writing. The third graders in Mrs. Nappy's room researched honeybees and gave a slide presentation with props, I might add, to the kindergarten classes as well, which was very interesting to see. To conclude the unit, Mr. Hadsel, he is an actual beekeeper and a parent in our building, gave an amazing presentation to the kindergartners. The students learned some very important facts about bees. He even demonstrated how bees he even had them dress as they were beekeepers and showed them an inactive beehive. Thank goodness, because I don't like bees. Students were able to taste the honey too, and this unit was a lot of fun for everybody. This time of year, there are a lot of activities happening, like the third grade, or the third iReady diagnostic, attending extended learning, taking field trips, book fair, recorder concerts, kindergarten graduation, field day, etc. Please find attached a list of activities, and you're more than welcome to attend. I'd also like to thank all the teachers for their hard work this year. Please know that I appreciate all that you do for our building and students. Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay, now I will present for Ms. Percello. She is not here tonight. She has some student services updates. First of all, PBS submissions were completed by May 1st. That was done for GPS, Osterberg, and Cork. So we're looking forward to, in September, hearing if we got the awards. I'm sure we did, ladies. A lot of time this month has been dedicated to determining caseloads for the staffing needs of 23-24. The request for proposals for related services was also sent out earlier this month with the deadline of May 20th. The district will be offering Wilson Level 1 certification to 10 staff members. With the exception of scheduling the 3-day introductory course this summer, we are going to be ready to start in September. And she said that she would like to thank, but I think all of us that would like to thank Tracy Stegg. She's been with us for 4 years. She's our school psychologist, and her husband is being relocated to Michigan, so unfortunately we are losing her. She works for the ESC. She does a lot of great things for all of our buildings, and she will be transferring to Michigan as well. So we are certainly going to miss her, but wish her good wishes on her new journey.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Doherty.
This microphone in my hand reminds me of 2 performances we just had, and I don't know what everybody's doing, but you're raising some very enthusiastic performers. Keep it up, because they were 2 great shows. We had a 2nd grade performance and a 1st grade performance today. Packed house. It's just so nice to watch the kids up there. And they have fun. Some things happening at our building. We just had Right to Read Week, and teachers met. They put it all together to plan a week of activities to promote the importance of reading. The theme this year was reading in the real world. The focus was on the importance of reading in everyday life and in our future careers. There are many activities going on. I'm not even going to be able to name them all, but Stop, Drop, and Read, morning announcements in which students from each grade level, they shared a piece of their writing, because writing is our goal as well, related to when I grow up, I would like to be. And it was very enjoyable to listen to all of those. And they also had to share in the writing how reading was going to help them obtain that career. So that was a good experience for them. And Mrs. Simmons was working her magic with her mural. And again, PTO awarded $10 gift cards to goal winners in each class. So the teachers invited many, many parents in to share their careers and have, speak to our students in each class. And that was very powerful, and we want to continue to do that again because we got a lot out of that. So thank you for everybody for taking the time. We do appreciate our teachers. We did celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week. And our PTO went above and beyond. Again, a lot of activities for them, a lot of special treats, and a big thank you station in which our students could write thank you notes to them. So that was a very nice, enjoyable time. The teachers also received notes from former students at the middle school, and that is just a wonderful thing. So thank you, middle school, for doing that. I wish you could see them, open them, and read them. It's something else, so keep that up. And then Mrs. Kirk was at it again. Last year, she entered the Junior Achievement Pizza Contest. And it's like an innovation challenge where students in grades 5 through 7, of course we did grade 5, they needed to create a 1-minute presentation video and create a pitch for a pizza and create the pizza. And this was from Pizza Joe's sponsors it. And this year, one of our teams won 2nd place. So they are going to be in a little ad for them, and so it was very exciting. Their creation was the messy pizza. I think they put every single thing on it they could. But anyway, and their target audience was their peers. So, and then again, the Hrina-Treharns visited us again, bringing not trees this year, but lilac bushes. And so our students, for Earth Day, our students were out there planting those. And one of my pictures here, you might see this big blow-up bubble, and that was a planetarium visit. Our PTO sponsored an assembly with the portable planetarium. The students got to go in, and the presenter, had a presentation on the ceiling, and it was a great experience. They loved it. So something different. We like to do different things. Our family group, we've been given the opportunity by Dr. Treharn to purchase materials for our family group activity. We were able to order books that puts basic life skills into words and a fun storyline. The books are called Spot books, in which we are always on the lookout to spot positive character traits. There is a teacher activity book that turns a simple set of books into a collection of activities. We wanted to get as much as we could for our money, so it really does open up a lot of different activities for us. So the support is greatly appreciated and makes planning our activities a lot easier, so thank you. And then 5th grade, again, they're doing their volume zoo. You can stop on by. They're displayed out front, in which it's a math activity, and they design zoo animals using volume. They have to use rectangular prisms, put them all together. The kids really like doing that, so that's a fun time too. I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Ms. Farina?
Good evening. All right, so May is very, very busy. It's the end of testing, so now we get in all our field trips, our field days, and all our assemblies. So a lot of this is courtesy of our wonderful PTO from GPS, so thank you. So we did celebrate Teacher Staff Appreciation Week last week. We had different food every day. We had prizes for the teachers. That was very fun. We also had our Me and My Guy dance. We had it once before COVID, and we had it back again last Friday. Thank you, PTO. And it was actually a glow party. So the kids were really excited for that. A lot of the moms were excited too. So there's lots of pictures on our GPS PTO page, and there's a few on my Twitter page. We also had Penitentiary Glen visit GPS last week. They did a K1 assembly. grades 2 and 3 assembly, and 4th and 5th grade assembly. So we saw Adam the box turtle, Odie the skunk, and Apollo the bald eagle. So that was a great time. And then we ended last week where all the first graders in the county went to Ag Day. So there was 1,000 first graders there. Everyone that went said it was such a great field trip because it was hands-on. Like, they milked a cow, they planted things, they even had like a frosty smoothie. So it was like a good time for everyone. Definitely a realistic experience. Yesterday, our 3rd graders took a field trip to Century Village Museum in Burton, Ohio. They got to learn about the 19th century lifestyle of families through touring homes, general stores, and the Pioneer School, that good old one-room schoolhouse. Next Tuesday, our 5th grade kicks off one of their many celebrations to end the year, and they're going to go one of my personal favorites, the Good Time 3. So hopefully they get some good weather, because they'll be on a boat for a while. And then Wednesday, all the 5th graders will go to the middle school. Thank you, Ms. Lammers and Mr. Mollahan, for setting up those visits for our students. I know they really look forward to that. We'll also have the Great Lakes Science Center at GPS next Thursday. Students will have different programs they'll watch. K-2 will participate in a Bubble Mania and Fire and Ice assembly in the morning, and grades 3 and 5 will view Fire and Ice and Styroblast in the afternoon. And then Friday, very busy week, we have the 5th grade recorder concert at 2 p.m. in the gym. Thank you, Mrs. Stowell. So families are welcome to attend. The following week, we have field days. Grades 3 to 5 will be on Friday, June 2nd. K-2 will be on Monday, June 5th. We also have a kindergarten assembly on June 1st. The kindergarten teachers are putting on a program for our families. They'll also have light refreshments afterwards. And our last day of school is Wednesday, June 7th, and it's a traditional 5th grade celebration day. They'll have an awards assembly, a dance, a nacho party, and then we end the school year with an all-school clap out of our 5th graders to the middle school. So, not on my report, though, is a man who does not like a lot of attention. It's Mr. Jay Corlew. He is retiring after 18 years on May 31st, so best of luck to Coach Corlew. Also, thank you to GATA and Mr. Barbo. I think he was back here earlier. I don't know where he is now, but he dropped off a beautiful bench yesterday. It sits out in front of GPS in honor of Mrs. Annie Bryan. We'll also have another ribbon cutting on Friday, courtesy of the Kendall Foundation. Mrs. Bryan was Teacher of the Year last 2 winters back, and they raised funds, and they're donating a picnic table to our courtyard in her honor because she always liked to eat her lunch outside. So that's Friday afternoon. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weatherholt.
Seems a little out of order. I thought for sure it was going to be the middle school. Every year, our students are provided with opportunities due to the dedication and sacrifice of our teachers. I'd like to thank my teachers for all that they do every day, going above and beyond to provide our students with the best educational experience possible. Thank you to Jen Crosley and Officer Cooper for taking our students to the CVC Sportsmanship Banquet. Congratulations to students inducted into the NHS. Mr. Winchell gave one of the best speeches I've ever heard. It was pretty amazing. And thank you to Mrs. DeBacker for making that possible. Congratulations to Jacob Alley and Brandon Hutton for choosing to serve in the Military Marine Corps. Thank you to Mrs. Christopher for caring for our students and their mental health with the Chain of Kindness project that she's doing right now. Thank you to Mrs. Markajon for providing our students with the STEM project, Mars Rover, and congratulations on her 3rd place finish. Congratulations to our prom court and King Anthony, and our Queen Enos. Thank you to Mrs. Unsinger, Mrs. Blevins, and Mrs. Markajon for making that possible. We had a great night. Thank you to our community, businesses, and the military for coming out today, putting together our 3rd annual job and career fair. Thank you to Mrs. DeBacker for making that possible. Without you guys, none of these things are possible for our students to experience. Thank you all so very much. Life is a gift, and it offers us a privilege, opportunity, and responsibility to give something back by becoming more. Tony Robbins.
and Ms. Lamers.
Okay, Mr. Mollahan's not here today, so I'm going to make this short and sweet because I don't really like being up here. So, first, we would like to thank, we want to welcome our new principal, Mr. Kent Paulin, to Geneva Middle School family, so welcome. Also, our state track meet was this past weekend, so our 7th grader, Taylor Sheeman, competed in the mile at the middle school state championship, or state track field meet this past weekend. She finished 11th in the state with her personal record of the mile of 5 minutes and 23 seconds. She also broke our school record, so congratulations, Taylor. You made Geneva proud. And then lastly is our 8th grader, Leah McMichael, attended a celebration of the science at The Ohio State University. We are excited to share that Leah received the superior rating for the Ohio Academy of Science in recognition of science projects she exhibited at the State Science Day. Additionally, she also won Dr. Lynn Effner Young Science Award and Fisher Scientific Junior Innovators Challenges Award. So we also want to congratulate Leah. And then also that's not on this list, but we just want to thank our staff. This past week was obviously Teacher Appreciation Week, and we couldn't do this without our staff. So thank you guys for everything you do, and we support you, and thank you. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
So I have a variety of topics to report on this evening. The first being with last week being the end of the public health emergency, we will no longer be sending the COVID emails or tracking them on our online dashboard, just so people are aware of that. Last month, I had shared at the meeting that we are committed to continuing to focus on literacy and closing the achievement gaps, and that we would be sharing some exciting plans to get books into students' hands in order to do so and prevent the summer slide. So I wanted to talk about 2 different projects that we are planning that I think are very exciting for our students. The first being that we are getting 4 book vending machines in the district, 1 for each of our Title I buildings. And these will be tied to both our Soaring Eagles and PBIS programs. So they truly are what they sound like, just as you would go to a vending machine for snacks or water or Gatorade or whatever you get out of your vending machines. These will be vending machines that have books in them. And so students can go to them, put a coin in, a special coin, and they would be able to pick a book of their choosing that they then get to keep. So very exciting stuff, and hopefully those will be done and delivered when kids return to school in August. Secondly, and equally exciting, also for our Title I buildings, each student will be going home this summer with a backpack full of fiction and nonfiction books, summer solutions for both math and reading, math games, and or different items depending on the grade level. So very exciting for our students in order to be able to provide those, again, to help continue to close the achievement gap. Sticking with the theme of summer, we have a lot of summer programming going on this summer, much like last year. Both at the elementary and middle school, they will hold sessions for summer school from June 12th to the 23rd. Those will be held at the middle school. We're doing those a little bit differently this year. They'll be held from 8:30 to 2:30. The morning will be focused on the core academic areas, and then the afternoon will be a STEM camp for students. So excited about that. Second session for elementary students will be in August. It'll be August 14th to the 18th. That one will only be a morning session from 8:30 to 11:30. And the second session for middle school will be August 1st through the 11th, also from 8:30 to 11:30. The high school will also have summer school this year. They will have 2 sessions. Their first session will be June 12th through the 30th. And then again, July 31st through August 18th, and theirs will be held from 8 to noon. None of the summer school sessions will be held on June 19th, so there will not be any sessions on June 19th. Moving to athletics, at a special meeting in April, the OHSAA Board of Directors approved a recommendation from their Executive Director's Office to establish what they're calling an athletic enrichment fund, to provide a financial contribution on an equitable basis to each member high school's athletic department. And so with that, we will be getting a contribution of $1,250 that each member school will get for this current 22-23 school year. And we should get that in August. That'll go to things such as equipment and uniforms. Next, I feel like we're going to the Mrs. Brzenko show. She was quite busy this past month, so congratulations to Mrs. Brzenko in the preschool. They earned a 5-star rating again for Step Up to Quality.
Yes.
And in order to get that rating, they look for certain things such as the education level of the staff and administration, professional development, and the amount of instruction, just to name a few. So congratulations again to Mrs. Brzenko in the preschool. Along those same lines, another congratulations goes out to Mrs. Brzenko. She secured a grant through the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency for the amount of $2,367. Much like the middle school had gotten a grant last year for the water bottle refilling stations, Mrs. Brzenko got a grant for Austinburg so that they can get 2 of those this year. And if that wasn't enough, she also, and we just found out about this the other day, she obtained a $5,000 grant from Parker Hannafin for a STEM lab for Austinburg, which they are calling the Eagles Nest STEM Lab. So thank you, Mrs. Brzenko, for all of your work. An update for our strategic plan, as I have been giving each month. Each of our 4 committees are continuing to meet and move forward with the creation of their 3 to 5 goals that will span over the next 3 years. Both the finance and community engagement committees have finished their goals, and they're going to be working on creating a short video, which will be one of the ways that we will roll out the information in August. And then our student success and facilities groups are on schedule to finish their meeting later this month. Each of them have a goal or 2 to wrap up. So I can't thank those who have been involved enough for their time, dedication, and input. Much like I believe Mr. Weatherholt had shared as part of his report as well, I had the pleasure of attending the Rite of Passage ceremony, which was held at PV this year and put on by the Ashtabula County Veterans Service Commission. It honors graduates for their commitment to a branch of service that they have chosen, and as he stated, from Geneva, we did have 2 students that have committed to going to the United States Marine Corps. Next year, we will have the pleasure here in Geneva of hosting that event for the county, so that will be exciting. We also had the opportunity, our students, to be included in the naming of the 910th Youngstown Air Reserve Station's aircraft tail number 93-3022. So this was a chance for is a chance for our students to be a part of history. The name that will be chosen will be by students associated with all of the schools in the following counties: Ashtabula, Trumbull, Mahoning, Columbiana, and Portage. So each district was allowed no more than 3 entries, and our district submitted 2. Collectively, the elementary schools came up with the name Soaring Eagle 1, and the middle school submission was Steel Wing. So hopefully, it will be one of those names that get chosen, and we will be a part of history for that. Lastly, I did want to talk about our bus inspection today. I certainly received a number of phone calls and emails in regards to that. I know that it is incredibly frustrating on the part of the parents. It is equally frustrating on the part of the district. So I can't say enough, but I apologize. I realize it's an inconvenience, and the notice was late, later than certainly we would have expected, due to the fact that the bus inspection occurred this morning. So we did have a bus inspection this morning. This is the second inspection of 3 that are annually done. So the one, of course, we all know that was in mid-April, approximately a month ago. We had one today, and then our next one is in June after school is out for summer. So they did inspect 9 buses today, 8 of which got flagged. And so the way the process works, and certainly I understand that the inspector is doing his job, and I can respect that, but I can also tell you within a matter of hours, based on what was flagged, 3 of our buses are already fixed and are ready for reinspection. So unfortunately, when they get fixed, we can't just put them back out on the road tomorrow morning for the AM route. So the state inspector has to come back out and re-inspect them before we're allowed to put them back out on the road again. And they were flagged for a variety of issues, but I will just share a few. One was pulled off the road because the left corner of the bumper was pushed in. So for that reason alone, it was taken off of the road, certainly would still be able to transport students safely with the back bumper pushed in. But again, they have to flag it for that. I understand that, and I can only respect what he is doing in his role. So we will get the bus inspector out as soon as we can. We are hoping to have him back out tomorrow to re-inspect those 3 buses that have been fixed. And we have another 4 buses that have already been sent out to be repaired. So our goal, again, is to get the buses back on the road as quickly as possible. I can happily say, which you will see later on the agenda today, that we recently filled 2 of our 3 positions, which I am very happy about. So you will see on the agenda, we are hiring this evening a new Director of Transportation and Maintenance, as well as an assistant mechanic / maintenance person. We do still have to fill the head mechanic position, but those 2 positions have been filled. Thank you.
And Terri, I have a question. Is there a way that we could put drivers in vans to go pick up students tomorrow morning?
To answer your question, they hold very limited amounts of students.
Like what's the limited amount? 10, 12?
I believe it's 7 to 9.
Okay, it's just an idea. Thank you.
Okay, I recommend the board approve the enclosed service agreement with the YMCA for the 23-24 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So just to note, if you looked at that, there were a few changes in there in this year's contract from last year. So there is a slight increase of $10 in the cost. However, the district will continue to pay both the registration fee and the snacks for the program. They also, in response to requests that they had from parents, they are going to start a little bit earlier to accommodate parents' work schedule. So they're going to start at 6:30 next year instead of 7.
Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
I recommend the board approve the enclosed settlement agreement.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes. I recommend that we continue our membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Quick question, is this the typical amount that it costs? Yeah, it's always $50 per sport. Thank you.
Roll call?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
I recommend that the enclosed list of Geneva High School students be approved for graduation.
Move.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
I recommend the board approve the curriculum recommendations from SESIC for 23-24 as presented in the attached summary.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
I just want to note this is a 6-year subscription that we are looking at. Some of the notes that the teachers had shared when they presented at Sussex, in particular Mrs. Capo, was that they found the series to be more in-depth. It had online resources that were very similar to our reading series. It provides for differentiation. There's an option for online assessments. There's an inquiry journal. There's a research companion. So it sounded like they were very happy with the curriculum with this new series.
Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler.
Yes.
I recommend approval of the revised pay to participate policy.
A move.
Second.
Discussion?
Is it just the dates?
Yes,
again?
it is.
Just the dates?
Just the date.
Thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
I recommend approval of the revised, I recommend that the board approve the enclosed student athletic policy handbook.
So, second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes. I recommend that the board approve the enclosed preschool parent handbook.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
I recommend that the board approve the enclosed elementary school handbook for the 23-24 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
I recommend that the board approve the enclosed middle school handbook.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler.
Yes.
I recommend that the board approve the enclosed high school handbook.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
I recommend that the board approve the following resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of a master electric energy sales agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Yeah,
Question?
I just wanted to ask, this is an extension of what we've already entered into over the last 3 years, is it?
This is a new agreement replacing what will end December of '23.
Okay, but same company, same idea behind it, updated?
Same,
updated.
same supplier, NG Resources, through the same group. Power for Schools is a combination of the Ohio Schools Council, OSBA, OASBO, and BASA. And as people have seen, rates have been going up. And so this program locks in a rate of 0.05635 kilowatt per kilowatt hour for 18 months. Now, I looked on the PUCO website, PUCO, and there may be 2 rates that were less than this, but they were variable rates. The guarantee was one was 1 month, one was 2 months. So the prospect would be that those would continue to go up each month, where they were just a little bit below this. One was 5 cents, one was like 5.3, 5.35. So this is a pretty good rate overall. When you look at most of the other rates on that website, they're $7 or more. I'm sorry, 7 cents per more per kilowatt hour.
And so this will be in effect for 18 months, so we'll have to reevaluate and approve another.
Prior to
contract.
June 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Roll call?
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes. I recommend approval of the enclosed First Amendment of lease agreement between 50 Park Street and Geneva Area City School Board.
Moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
The treasurer recommends approval of revision 1 of the 5-year forecast and the assumptions.
Move.
Second.
Discussion?
Okay, hopefully the board had an opportunity to look over the 5-year forecast. Copies of the 5-year forecast page showing the numbers and some graphs were available on the back table. So I'm just going to try to quickly run through the changes. As you recall, school boards have to pass a 5-year forecast in November, the initial 5-year forecast for each fiscal year, and then in April or May, adopt an update to that. So we're just updating some of the numbers, seeing what may have changed from the beginning of the year till now. So when you look at your assumptions, you see on page 1, we've added the 2022 valuation, which increased 2.78% over last year. We updated the fiscal year 23 collections, which had been projected to be about 1%, as this is a tax year that is not part of a reappraisal year, not part of a triennial update. Ashtabula County will be going through a triennial update during 2023. So we would expect to see a greater percent increase next year. So we ended up with a 2.08% increase, which was a little more than originally anticipated. The forecast then changed for next year, fiscal year 24, instead of 1.5%, that was up to 2%. The rest of the forecast remains the same for that. On the income tax side, we're on page 2. 2023 final came in at 12.37% over fiscal year 22. Originally it projected a 7.5% increase. So again, that continued to grow greater. We're seeing a higher amount of Ohio adjusted gross income reported. And so the forecast for the remaining years has been changed, where we were showing 3.75% for fiscal year 24. That was up to 6.2%, and then the others were adjusted upwards, as you can see by the highlights on there. Nothing changes again till you get to page 4. Just added a note about the fiscal year 24, fiscal year 25 biennial budget. So you all know, as reported by Mrs. Milliken Dixon, that the budget was proposed by Governor DeWine, and it will, according to the House version, Governor DeWine's version, continued the 3rd and 4th year phase-in of the Fair School Funding Plan. The House version updated the inputs in fiscal year 22 from fiscal year 2018 numbers. And that is a big deal, because without updating those inputs, keeping it at the old inputs would cause the share, we have a state share, we have a local share. Keeping those inputs at a more outdated figure, 2018, would decrease the state share and increase the local share of the formula, causing local taxpayers to foot more of the bill than the state. It's already less state funding than the local funding portion. So updating those inputs was a big deal, and it helps account for inflation as costs rise. So we hope that that makes it through the Senate and the conference committee. And I guess I heard somebody say that John Barbo may not be here. He was here before, and I know he had gone down and testified. Well, I think John and anybody else, we need to contact our state senator, Sandy O'Brien, because right now what we're hearing from the Senate is they don't think we need the Fair School Funding Plan. They think the old formula, which had 380 school districts on a guarantee, was good. It just needed some adjustments. So that is not the attitude they took last year, and not really what we were hoping to hear this year. So you got to let our state senators know that this is important for school funding.
I have her cell phone number if you want it.
So Kevin, why the change? Why the shift?
Well, remember, the Senate has always been upfront with things like the backpack bill, funding, taking state funding to help private, parochial, and charter schools. And last year, they supposedly had their own, or in the last biennium, they had their own proposal, but it really wasn't much of a proposal. So in the end, in the conference committee, the House kind of won out over the Senate and pushed the Fair School Funding Plan in place. The House has already passed it overwhelmingly in this biennium, for this next biennium, but it's going to be a battle in the Senate. Just the philosophy, I guess, of the people that are serving in the Senate. So on the state aid, the numbers have been updated to reflect the last foundation settlement and school finance payment report received by the district, the May #1, before it was following the November #1. So all the numbers in the chart on page 5 change a little bit. I mean, in total, the change isn't a lot. Some numbers went up, some numbers went down. One thing that had an adjustment there is the casino tax revenue. It ended up at $142,373 for fiscal year 23. I had originally projected $143,285, so it was a little less than projected. But I adjusted the numbers then up a little bit because I don't think it's going to go down as fast as I initially had projected. Remember, this funding source was going down and then really got hit during COVID because they shut down the casinos. So there was a big drop. But when they opened back up, the numbers jumped big and were higher than they had ever been as people, I guess, wanted to get back into the casinos. But they do face a lot of competition and other things that have opened up that aren't part of any formula funding schools. So with that competition, this is projected to go down over time. You see the updates then also to the total unrestricted aid. The next thing on page 5 is the property tax allocation, where we report this as a percentage of real estate collections. So as our real estate goes up, this would tend to go up as well. However, the percentage that's being applied continues to decrease as the homestead gets lower. The number of people eligible for that homestead reimbursement keeps shrinking since there's an income limitation. And so last year, the percentage that we applied to real estate was 10.96. For fiscal year 23, it ended up being 10.78%. This has declined every year. So we continue to show that decreasing, but it can't, right now at least, go below 10%. But again, we got House Bill 1 that's still out there, which was pretty bad legislation, changing some of the tax. The goal of House Bill 1 was to give a state income tax reduction, but use savings from some property tax changes, one of which was to eliminate this rolled back and homestead reimbursement from the state. And the way they were going to fund that was to make some changes in the property tax rates. What they didn't realize that was because of House Bill 920, create a situation where local taxpayer bills would actually increase rather than decrease. So they get maybe a state income tax reduction, but their property tax bills would go up. So hopefully that House Bill 1 goes nowhere. Again, another thing that you might want to contact your legislators. For all other revenues, there are a number of changes here. First, the manufactured homes collection increased over fiscal year 22, so the projection was up less than $1,000 a year from $40,834 to $41,620 for the rest of the time. Another big change was in our interest income. So obviously, as you see the investment report, as lower interest-bearing vehicles mature, we were able to get much higher interest rates, and these have increased much faster. Again, I think I pointed out that the economists had been saying that we would not see interest rates rise until the end of 24, but they started much earlier. And so now where I had 150,000 forecasted for 23, it looks like we should earn interest at about 224,000. So those numbers have been increased. Next year I'm showing 250,000 instead of 180. And then 25, 275,000 instead of 200,000. Fiscal year 26, 300,000 instead of 200,000, and fiscal year 27, 325,000 instead of 2,000. Now, all that could change if something happened with the recession, or we go the other way. Interest rates could go back down, but right now they've been, the last Fed meeting they raised it again, so they continue to go up. All other financing sources, we had nothing. Does not look like we will be selling anything during fiscal year 23, so that had to be adjusted down a little bit. Also, the refunds of prior year expenditures, you see a paragraph there that addresses some of the large numbers due to BWC rebates in the past. We don't see BWC rebates anymore. The Asheville County Educational Service had reimbursed us for our DD satellites, the OT, PT, and speech that are done in those, but now they are providing that service, so there will be no reimbursement, following the next year. So that number has been lowered. On the expenditure side, not too many big changes. We had forecasted a 4% increase in the salaries and wages. Right now, through April, that's trending at about 4.3%, so that was increased a little bit throughout the forecast, along with an allowance next year for unfilled positions, hoping that those positions get filled. That's a couple teaching positions, the gap that we've had in the maintenance and the transportation department, and hopefully we can continue to find more bus drivers. On the fringe benefits side, I had projected 7%. We're under a lot of pressure to raise our medical premium. We didn't increase it very much the last couple of years. We had 7.5% for all, or 7% for all fringe benefits, so that's been increased to 7.5%. The hope is that we can keep any medical premium increase to about 10%, but we are under pressure from our Council of Governments to increase that more, because the district has been hit with a lot of what would be titled catastrophic claims, large number of large claims. So, I mean, that would be the wages and fringes, unless we have to make a larger increase in insurance premiums. On the purchase service side, I had a 4% increase projected throughout, but last year we had seen a decrease, and if you recall, the decrease was because of the removal of a big cost item, almost $1.8 million in charter school deduction, open enrollment deduction out, and the Ed Choice scholarships, John Peterson and autism scholarships. So that decreased the purchase service amount drastically last year. This year, it's trending that we're looking at a little, just slight decrease from last year, so that's been adjusted, and then a 4% increase is projected after that. Supplies and materials remain the same, capital outlay. Other objects have been increased a little bit, and again, the big thing in the other objects are the administration fees for property taxes and for the school district income tax. And as our collections go up, as those are a percentage of collections, they rise as well. So with the larger increase, then this goes up a little more. On the transfers, right now I had projected that we would have no need to transfer lunchroom through fiscal year 25, and then the forecast had contained an expected $60,000 transfer. But with the balance that the lunchroom has built up and the transfers, as you look in the past, 79,000 in 20, 74,000 in 21, based on the size of those transfers, the balance could carry us for another 4 years. So right now, I'm not projecting any need to transfer to the lunchroom in the remainder of this forecast, However, the athletic transfer's gone up, where it was 89,869 last year. It's going to be over 100,000 this year, it would look like. So with the expenses that we have in there and the income not covering it, there will be a need to transfer over 100,000 in athletics, and so that has increased a little bit. So that is basically it for the changes. You know, a lot of the big thing here is to hope that the Fair School Funding Plan gets through this biennium, and that next biennium, the 5th and 6th years are updated, and again, the inputs would need to be updated to fiscal year '24. Right now, on that state funding, we are still on the guarantee. So we're getting closer to being off that guarantee and actually being on the formula, but we won't really know until it's fully funded where we stand on that. You know, there still could be some districts left on the formula, and most of that is because of declining enrollments. School districts that face declining enrollments, you know, on this formula aren't going to generate the money that they did in the past. So with that, you see the state funding pretty flat, except for the little decrease in the casino tax revenue. So that is the 5-year forecast that I'm asking the board to approve. I don't know if you have any questions.
So looking at line 6.010, when we get into fiscal year '26 and we start seeing red, can you just explain a little bit?
Well, again, I didn't mention it this time, but in November we mentioned that in fiscal year '25 you start seeing, we hit that ESSER cliff. ESSER monies run out, or we're supposed to have them spent by that time. So any of the salaries and fringes, any of the purchase service, any of the supplies that we've been purchasing under using ESSER funds and student wellness and success funds, if we continue to do those, and the numbers are shown in the assumptions as to what we're projecting to pull in, then that's going to more greatly increase the expenditures in those categories. And with not a lot of big increases in the revenue, then eventually in years 4 and 5, we're showing some red where our expenditures will exceed our revenues those years. Now, again, remember the board has time to make adjustments to that. Maybe some of those things that we've been spending don't continue. You know, maybe if we are get caught up with the learning loss associated with COVID, then we don't need to continue the after-school and summer school recovery. I don't know. I'm just saying that, you know, that is in those salaries and fringes right now pulling in, but decisions, the board has time to make decisions between then and now to see what we bring in, because the goal obviously would be to match expenditures with revenues. You know, if we're going to spend 27 million and receive 27 million, we have more balanced spending and revenues. So the goal is try to match those up, and the red is basically created by that ESSER cliff, and those things all coming in.
So the things that we're using ESSER funds for now typically would be paid for out of the general fund.
The salaries and fringes that we do, yes.
So if we were to say, let's use the ESSER funds for something different, and let's use the general fund money for salaries and fringes, we would be in the red sooner if we were spending that ESSER money on something that's not in here.
Yeah, if we hadn't moved some of the positions that we brought back and used the ESSER funds to do that, yes, we wouldn't have quite the balance that we have. It would have cut into that a little bit.
Sooner
Yes.
than what it's showing here.
Right.
Okay.
And that was what we cautioned about, right? That it was dangerous, risky, I guess, to spend the ESSER funds on things that we want to be renewable, because then where does the money come from when the ESSER monies are gone? So
Right.
we tried not to do that. I mean, we tried to buy a thing that's a thing that we can have, and instead of a salary or that would be ongoing. Yeah.
Right, but again, just as we mentioned in November, I mean, this is one of the best financial forecasts we've had. We've been able, with those ESSER funds and not taxing the general fund, to build a cash balance that gives us protection in the future, where before, we were always so close that as the state cut funding, then we were in danger of running out of funding. When we couldn't pass a levy, we were in danger of running out of funding, and we had to make cuts twice, in 12-13 and then again in 17-18. So we have a little more protection. The board passed a cash balance policy. We're well within that in this 5-year forecast. In looking at expenditures of, say, well, even in the 5th year, that would equate the 92 days cash would equate to about, I believe, $7.6 million. So we have a cash balance that is over that at that point. So you're not in danger of, getting too close to that limitation where you have to act quickly. So there's always time, and again, this is a 5-year forecast, things change. The biennium budget is a big part of this, since the state funding is the biggest portion of our funding. And if things change at the state up or down, then that has a big impact on the forecast.
Any other discussion?
I just want to thank you, Kevin, for that, and thank you for the piece about the Senate struggling with the fair funding, because I missed that in my reports, and so I appreciate that you brought that up. Thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
I recommend the board approve the following student as having met the requirements for early graduation.
I'll move.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
I recommend the board suspend the administrative director, supervisor, central office staff contract guidelines for the 23-24 contract year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
I recommend that the following director be hired on a 2-year contract.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes. I recommend the following personnel actions.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
I recommend the following personnel actions for the 23-24 contract year.
Move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just like to say that Emily Foltz is here, so welcome. If you'd like to stand or wave so people know, thank you.
Middle school band?
Yes, she will be our assistant band director.
Roll call?
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Our next item on the agenda is the public comment section. The board has adopted bylaw 0169.1 to provide for 30 minutes of public participation at regular meetings of the board. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes in duration, and no participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. All participants are expected to comply with the standards set forth in the board policy manual with regard to public comment. And now we will begin the 30-minute period of public comment for today's meeting. And when you do step up to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record. Amber, are you timing? Okay.
Brad Pearson, 106 Elm Street. When I graduated in 2010, I had to take a civics class that was taught by a history teacher, much like Matt Deering, who currently isn't here. In that class, I was taught by probably my least favorite teacher on earth, and it still remained my favorite class, and I still got it done, even though we didn't see eye to eye on anything, on any personal level whatsoever. And in that, we learned that democracy utilizes something called utilitarianism. And before we all roll our eyes, it basically just means what's the greatest good for the greatest number that they have chosen. Some people have had competing philosophical ideals for many years, but what we've seen is authoritarianism dies when democracy lives. And that's why civics is a required class. And one of my favorite things, to the point where now it's my career. I work in civil rights. I love civil rights. I like hearing contested opinions. I like seeing opinions that challenge me to face if the same rights are afforded to the same people or different people, that maybe they're not being executed correctly. And I like to hear those things, even if I disagree with them. Democracy is dead in this room. There are positions that have been filled without even being electorally sufficient for a majority. That's not democracy. We are being told what the truth is, the decisions that were made. $1.8 million, whatever you spend it for with facilities. I understand we can muddy the waters with how that money has to be spent, but if we speak clearly and articulately and say maybe we could just dial this back and win the support of the community, we would rally behind you. No one is here to witch hunt anyone. If we just did the right thing, if we consulted the public and not post or email or do a robocall in 2023 to get 6 people to attend these hearings that I know that you guys don't like either. I know you don't, and I'm not holding you to them. We would have a bigger and larger portion of democracy, so we would have a bigger and larger identification of what the utilitarian American way our forefathers wanted us to execute democracy. Again, I want to say, it is not by clutching your pearls and getting even with people through executive action. That's not how it goes. In fact, if you study through history like I did in POD, you'll learn that almost every government that had articulated itself that way fell, and it fell to the people. They did not go in the streets to be violent. They marched peacefully, they marched together, and now we celebrate those people like Martin Luther King Jr. And we celebrate those people that went through Central and Eastern Europe after Nazi Germany was toppled and rebuilt democracy from the ground up. So I ask, if we teach our children this, instead of stripping those people that teach us those core values out of the classroom, while we arbitrarily allow some people to be investigated for Title IX actions and not some others, I think that maybe we should look at the application of democracy in this room and say, if we're not serving it for our children, maybe it's time we talk to the people who execute those voting actions. I would suggest, if you'd like to understand anything more about the principles of democracy like I was taught in my core curriculum passed by some of the people on this board, you could talk to someone like Matt Deering, who teaches it, as it's a required subject matter for seniors in the school.
I'm Isabella Hanna, and my address is Ruth Street, 188. I'm here to talk about the racism problem we have. Like we say, it's the same story, just a different name. I think it's funny how you want to act like us, how we walk, how we talk, but yet you're against us like we're a crime. It's like you want to diminish our identity. No matter how loud we shout, nobody hears us. What some of you like to call the hard ER, you tend to call black people it. But do you really know what it means? It means a black person who is systematically subjected to discrimination and unfair treatment, or dirty cow. Now when I say dirty, I don't mean unclean. I mean something insulting and rude. So I'm standing here and I say that we may settle this racism problem down. We are here for an education, not to get traumatized by people and get made fun of for our race. If I could ask, how do you describe a black person, which I have asked before, most of them have said dark skin, dreads, braids, or even gang member and rapper. But what about the words smart, intelligent, or even normal? Now, I know everyone is different, but that doesn't mean you get to treat us like we're a nobody or even useless. Why do I have to go to school and hate being there? I transferred to a different school but came back because Geneva had a better education. I came back to a racist, traumatizing, hateful school. For my education, I risked everything to come back for my education. But yet you don't seem to care that I did this for myself. Not because I miss my friends, but for an education. I come to school to learn, not to cry in the bathrooms, not to have anxiety attacks, not to be mentally drained. But yet I'm gonna keep moving and put a smile on my face like nothing ever happened. One thing what you probably won't understand is that racism was taught. Trust and believe. I know what you want from me. You want my power that I have, and I won't give it to you because that reaction will make the reaction that I won't give to you makes you weaker. One thing you don't know is that we come from survivors, and we won't give up. You might think it's funny calling us monkeys, but we're getting stronger as the day goes on. Like Martin says, I have a dream, but I do have a dream, and that dream is that we will no longer suffer from this unequal humanity we have in this world. I want to be treated the same as others. I don't want to be treated unfairly. I will keep on going and not give up with no hesitation.
Thank you.
Well, this won't stay. Can you hear me?
Did you get it?
Yep. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Karen Vossers, 890 Millwood Drive. Since when did these students start running our schools? You have a discipline policy in place, but they are not being followed. There is a first grade student at an elementary school that has made threats, assaulted classmates, assaulted 2 teachers, a few police reports that were filed by the parents, restraining order on one of the family members. Children's Services has been called by a couple of people, removed from 2 different classrooms and put into another one, and it has been suspended. Per our conversation, Terry, I had asked, why is this student still here? You said it was up to the building principal to make that call. Then why do you overturn most of what she says? And you still allow this student go on a field trip with that same first grade classes and allow him to attend a dance? Why is there no stability with these consequences among our students? Why is there some but not for the others? What kind of example are you setting for our students and our staff? You are not standing up for our students' safety or their well-being or their education needs. And you sure are not standing up for any of us. Is that okay? Absolutely not. But you think so. If it was one of your child going through the same things, would it be different? Of course it will. A first grade teacher was put on administrative leave for 15 weeks while being investigated. 15 weeks. It takes that long to investigate, to come to some kind of ruling? Seriously? We call that dragging your feet. The students in these classes have been given a good education. The students with the IEPs have not been getting the services that they are required to receive and supposed to get. We are being pulled for this one student. At the beginning of the year, you wanted a meet and greet. You wanted to hear any concerns or suggestions, and look how that turned out. You are failing each and every one of us, including the most important is the students. And that is why we're all still here, because of the students. At every board meeting, you have citizens, teachers' aides coming up here, voicing their concerns, their problems they see, and even the angry ones because nothing's being done. We will not stop voicing our concerns, and we are not going nowhere. You are supposed to be here for our students and to make sure they get a good education. That's your job. It's supposed to be a safe place, not for students to be afraid to come to school. In one of our conversations, also, a first grade teacher pretty much begged you to come sit in her class and observe. She ended up walking away in tears. Then you asked me how it was going. I said the same thing. Come in the room and you will see what everyone is telling you. Did you go in the room to observe? No, you did not. That says to us you really don't have our backs.
what it's going to take for you to step up and do something. Every one of you need to focus on how to fix our problems in our schools and with the busing. And quit worrying about your new building you want. We have a problem here. Let's worry about that first, and then your building. We are gonna lose good principals,
30 seconds
teachers, teachers' aides, bus drivers, and the most important, our students, if you do not stop and realize what is actually going on. Thank you.
Katie Sunderland, 6416 North Ridge Road West, Geneva. I was scrolling on the internet the other day and I came across a video as a mother of 2 students of Geneva and a teacher at GPS. It resonated with me. While I don't agree with all the verbiage the author used, the overall message I think is very important for everybody to hear. This is a direct quote. His name is Justin Bader. He's a PhD. So if I could identify one thing that schools are doing right now that's causing the most problems, it would be this. The idea that a student just needs to calm down and then they're ready to go back to learning. They're ready to go back to class without any regard for who they hurt or who they scared or what kind of horrible things they did, especially violence. And when it comes to violence, then we have to be very clear about our boundaries. We have to have boundaries in place, both to create a sense of predictability and safety for the students so that they know if they are unsafe, they cannot remain in the classroom. Not just for a minute, but that they're going to be excluded for a while if they are unsafe. But we also need to create a sense of predictability and safety for all the other students, because right now, the only predictability we're creating by sending kids right back to class when they're violent is the predictability that this is going to happen again, possibly immediately. I think every day teachers and other students are in what's basically a domestic violence situation where they're forced to not have any boundaries, not have any safety, not have any distance from someone who is repeatedly violent. And I think it's going to be a while before we realize the full consequences that that decision has had. And really it comes down to this right here, sending kids back to class as soon as they calm down. It does not matter if the student is calm and ready to learn. We still need to exclude them for a while in order to put boundaries in place for other students. Thank you.
Hello, Amber Lamphere, 496 West Liberty Street, Geneva, Ohio. I have a couple of things that I've noticed. I'm noticing that a couple of our policies are not being followed in the schools, and the biggest one is the anti-bullying policy, which I believe comes down from state legislation. Clearly, it's not being followed in the middle school. We had a middle school up here. It's not being followed there. And clearly, it's still not being followed at GPS, where my daughter attends. The same student has hurt other students and is still in the class. The student now has shoved the teacher up against the wall with the desk. All that happened to that student was that student was sent to another class. So why are we allowing 3 different classrooms to be terrorized by the same kid, rather than saying, hey, this kid needs help? We're not saying expel him, we're not saying this, we're saying why aren't we getting him the help he needs? He's gonna be the one that's gonna be the violent one that's gonna bring the gun to school. He's in 1st grade, why can't we get him the help that he needs? That's all I'm asking, help him before he kills a student.
Erin McCormick, 225 Centennial Street. I did not expect to be standing here in my pajamas, but this is getting a little ridiculous. Within the bus issue, racism, IEPs, lack of staff because working conditions, anti-bullying, trans kids and LGBT kids suffering, and threats to the middle school, there are way too many issues to talk about. So I'll just cover the one that is specifically important today. As we all know, with the high amount of buses being flagged, kids will not be able to get to school. I'm asking tomorrow, will those children be docked because of a school's inability to provide transportation for families where 100% of parental units in a home works or takes care of other children in the home? Because there are kids like me who have missed no days or close to no days of school. I was just in a car accident, and on the days that I did not have a car, I would not have been able to get to school if there were no buses. Other kids do not have personal transportation and rely on the buses that are not showing up 100% of the time. Are their records going to be marked with an absent if their bus just does not come? Is there a way that you, as a group of well-educated individuals in charge of the school district, can get the situation resolved to the best possible way so this doesn't happen here again? Could you relocate funds currently going to, hypothetically, promotions or hypothetical, of course, unnecessary expenses? Could they be relocated towards a hiring of mechanics for buses? Could they be relocated towards extra buses in case of emergencies as this? Now, I'm just a senior in high school and a Dean's List sophomore in college. My knowledge is not unlimited in terms of how people get hired, how a school district is run, or how buses are purchased or whatsoever, but I know enough to know that this is a broken system and it's not a good look for the town of Geneva that I've grown to love. I'm going into the field of education, and I was planning on coming back to Geneva to teach in a few years. But the way that the school is going, I'm terrified, and I probably will not be going back. I'm graduating and getting out, thank God, but my sister over there has 4 more years, and my 4-year-old sister has another 14. And even though I might be standing up here with my head probably up my, well, no, you know, I won't stop fighting for their education and being in schools from the time they get on the bus that is supposed to arrive at our drive to the point where they are getting home safely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, just so you're aware, we did purchase new buses. We are still waiting on those to come in. They're anticipated to come in June. And if any students cannot get to school tomorrow due to the canceled routes, they will be marked as excused.
Hi, I'm Christy Burns, 4262 North County Line Road. I just have a couple tips, and I never will come up here and complain about something if I don't have some form of a solution for it. So I'm here to give you a couple tips that I think will help parents for tomorrow. If you could let them know the answers to these questions that I'm seeing all over the place that we've got from parents. Can you let them know that there will be an excused absence if you cannot provide transportation? Can you put that out to the parents, please? Can you also please let the VOED parents know if they will have a transportation bus to the vocational school? That is a question that's going around a lot. Our administrators can only answer so much when they don't have the communication with the transportation department. We don't know at different times which bus kids are riding. So many parents had no idea today which bus their kid was riding because it has changed so many times this year. So a lot of things happen where you're calling a student to see if they can come down to tell you what bus they're on so they can tell their parents if they need a ride home or not. So much time was disrupted in the school time today because of this. If these buses were inspected in the morning, like the press release says, why? Were parents not even given a slight heads up that, you know what, we may have some issues today with busing. We wanted to let you know so that you can go ahead and work on things. We had parents that had surgeries today. We had parents that had one vehicle. We had students wait for extended times. There was no transportation buses from the high school to the middle school, which a lot of people go from the high school to the middle school and then walk home. So students were walking so unsafely down Route 84. There's no sidewalks on that. 2 parents said they almost hit a child because of the glare of the sun. Now, our administrators can only do so much. I think they did a fabulous job today. I mean, I think they did a fabulous job today with what they were given. Such short time notice, I mean, we've got to do better. If we're having issues that much with transportation, use the ESSER funds. I've got a great idea. Hire a secretary to sit over there that can make those calls, that knows all the buses, that has a list of what students ride which buses. It needs to come from the transportation department, not from principals who do not even know which buses the children ride. The parents don't know. Our busing has some issues, and I have got to say, I was really disappointed when you kind of downplayed the issue of a dented bumper. All these things are safety issues for a reason. That bumper is there for a reason. It's not a small thing. And if it was such a small thing, then I welcome anyone to trade in their shoes, put on some steel toes, and go out there and work it tomorrow. Go out there and fix those buses. If they're just such small issues. And if you're wondering what things an inspector is going to flag, I've already did the work for you. You can go to ohioschoolboards.org. You're going to click on the Ohio School Bus Inspection Manual. They have an updated one on there. And then you're going to go through, and the inspection and out-of-service criteria is listed for every single thing. It has it listed what are approved for each thing, what is a violation, and then what would put it out of service. It's tagged in green, yellow, and red, and it's on the Ohio School Board site. I look on there. If these are simple fixes, a proactive leader would have already have known what was coming.
30 seconds remaining.
Whether that comes from transportation, whether that comes from her boss, which I would assume is Dr. Treharn. I mean, we are failing our parents and our students with these busing issues. My family has been affected by it. And today, there were 8 different buses, whether they were combined with transfer or not, that were affected. Please fix it. We could do a calamity day tomorrow.
Alex Carmigiano, 6412 Northridge Road.
Can you say your last name again?
Carmigiano.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I was a 2009 graduate of Geneva. I also have a kindergartner at GPS. Fortunately for me, I am able to transport him to and from school every day. And at 1:11 o'clock today, I got the robocall that there was going to be no busing. When I came to pick up my kindergartner, the line from all the parents who I'm assuming were there to get their kids who usually ride a bus was so long out of the parking lot, it was up over the bridge, over the railroad tracks, blocking through traffic, blocking the housing developments. And I was just like, wow, this is absolutely ridiculous. I was going to bring up what that lady said before of how, if these are such small, minor problems with the buses, why aren't they proactively fixed? There had to be a way that we could have known that they were going to be flagged ahead of time before one. I mean, you said there's 3 inspections a year. It seems like something common that happens all the time that we should be aware of. I don't know if you read on the Facebook sites for where all the parents are voicing their concerns on there, but one parent has said that her bus 18 handicap bus, the lift was not working and they had to physically lift the child in the wheelchair over the lift. And nobody's mentioned that, and I told her to attend today, and I don't believe she has. Kids, she's right behind me. Great. In the recent past, with busing problems, middle school students were sent across the street to the library to wait for transport. That is the most unsafe thing ever. If my child was in the middle school and was just sent over to the library, and you just, like 100 kids for the librarians, I mean, my friend had to go pick up her children, and she went in there, and the librarian looked frazzled and was like, I don't know where he is. I don't even know who your kid is. You're going to have to go find him. How? 126? And as anybody's been in the library, it is smaller than this auditorium, basically.
And also, the normal kids that go to the library know my name.
Yes. So, you know, she had a great suggestion of, can't we use vans to pick up some students? And you said, oh, well, it only carries 7 or 9. Well, aren't 7 or 9 students coming to school better than there's no students just saying, oh, screw it, they'll get there when they get there. As the superintendent, you're the face of the district. You're responsible for the successes, and most assuredly, you're responsible for the failures. The fault is yours, but fault also lies with board members for allowing you to run this district the way you have been. You've said numerous times that the safety and well-being of the students is your priority. Your actions say otherwise. The board is responsible for evaluating your performance and can terminate you if they believe you are not doing a good job. I was reading, and there was an author, an education writer, Karen Chenoweth, and for her book, she once asked a Miami school teachers how long it would take bad leadership to tear a school apart. She expected them to say that they would never let that happen, and instead they frowned and said about 20 minutes. There's another article that I found that I thought was funny. It was from the superintendent of schools.com, an article called The Classic Mistakes of a New Superintendent, and number 7 is redecorating your office or rearranging the entire central office as soon as you arrive to a new district, often seen as a power play or an ego trip. We all know the money you are allocating. We all know the money that you are allocating for these new offices with $50,000 in new furniture could be better spent to improve student lives. So keep telling yourself that the kids are your priority. You should be ashamed.
I am Rachel Iggy. I live at 19 Elm Street.
I'm sorry, your last name?
Iggy?
Iggy. Okay, thank you.
No problem. As she said before, my handicapped son, we're on our 3rd handicap bus now because the first one broke down, and they called me saying they don't know if there's another bus to get him. So I had to go pick him up from school. No problem. And then the next day, we get a new bus, and I had to physically lift my son with his wheelchair over the lift because it wasn't working. And now this morning, the newer bus that we got, it sounded god-awful. I was not sure it was going to take my son to school, and actually, like, the wheelchair lift would actually work. He can't do those steps. He is physically disabled. To bring another ridiculous thing is I'm fighting so hard for a one-on-one aid for my son, who has had multiple falls. One of them has led him to a spinal injury because he did not have an aid when he was supposed to. It's in his IEP. I just had the IEP amended for the millionth time this school year, just yesterday, and they promised me he will get a one-on-one aid next year. I have talked to Kelly multiple times, and she is claiming he is getting those services. One person to my son. That is a one-on-one aid. That is the meaning of that. He is not getting that. You're expecting generalized teachers to do one-on-one aid with my son when she has 22 other students. That's all I got.
Thank you.
There's 2 minutes remaining. That's what you'll have, and there will be no more after that.
Oh, fantastic. Chris Dodd, 400 Greenridge Drive. I think the school board needs to realize that there's a massive problem in this district. Clearly, the amount of issues that have come up today should indicate that. On top of that issue, you also have the real possibility of losing one of the best principals in this county to another school district. With that, you're going to lose multiple teachers. This district has a horrific reputation right now. The problems that have been spoken to and of today in past board meetings have made it the way all the way down to Columbus. People across the state are talking about this district, and yet the board sits silently and does nothing. There is a clear problem, and the problem is Dr. Treharn. You cannot blame everybody else. There is nobody else to blame. There is transportation issues. If Treharn's not the problem, fire the transportation supervisor. Principals are leaving in droves. Who are going to run the schools? When they leave, the teachers leave. Who are going to teach the children? There is only one thing that has changed, and it was when Dr. Treharn came into this district. Before that, this was a destination district. The school board needs to stand up and recognize that they need to part ways. Thank you.
That brings us to the board member reports. Mrs. Metzler?
Yeah, thank you. I have 2 reports to give. These will be my final 2 of this school year. I visited the high school in April, and I met with Mr. Weatherhold, of course, because I always make it a routine to talk to the principals first. And we had a really good conversation about some of the things that he's thinking of moving forward with in the high school in terms of STEM type of education and about some personalized learning environment. We talked a little bit about potentially a cursive course being offered and basic computer skills and apps. So things that are going to propel our students further with their education that they might not be getting now. One of the topics we talked about was drone certification, and we've heard about that and read about that being done at Spire. So there are some opportunities, I think, in our high school to introduce new ideas to our students and help further their education in areas that we may not have thought about before. So I appreciated having that conversation with Mr. Weatherholt. I did talk to the 2 school counselors as well. And one of the most positive things that they both had to tell me is that in the high school, the behaviors this year are getting better from what they were last year, though mental wellness and health are still points of concern. But they were seeing better behaviors within the school. There was some ideas talked about maybe hiring a clinical psychologist in our high school. It was an idea that one of the counselors had to help with the mental wellness of our students. I have always advocated since visiting our schools, I've always advocated for more school counselors, not only for our elementary schools, but also in the high school and the middle school. I know that doesn't always, there's not always money there for that, but I'm a strong believer in that, and I'll continue to advocate for that. Because maybe one day that will be something that we can actually implement in our schools. So it was a very good visit to the high school. I also visited Austinburg last week, and I got to see the new cameras that we've been talking about over the course of months. And they were just recently installed when I was there, so still learning those cameras, but crisp pictures, the clarity is great. I think they're going to be a real asset to all of our schools. And I did make a point of going around to most of the classrooms with Mrs. Brzenko and at least sticking my head in and saying hello to the teachers. Some of the teachers I was able to have conversations with. Others it was just a hello, have a great summer. But I always appreciate being able to be welcomed into those classrooms regardless of what they're doing at the time. I was able to see one of the classrooms. One of the things that we've been talking about is this personalized learning, flexible seating. One of the classrooms that I visited had a flexible seating arrangement in that classroom, and it was a managed flexible seating. It was an option for the students. It wasn't a necessity. It was done really well. So I have had some opinions in the past on that, and I still have some opinions on that. But I was happy to see a teacher taking the initiative on that and putting it into place and managing it well so that the students had options. And then I had also, when I was there, been told about the 5-star step up to quality in the preschools, because I did visit both of the preschool rooms and didn't realize how many students we had in preschool at Austinburg. So that was really nice to see. And again, like I said, I was able to at least stop in and say hello and have a good summer to all of the teachers. So that'll be my last report for this school year. Taking the summer off. I don't want to bother anybody of any of the workers that are working during the summer, and I'll pick that back up in September if they're so willing, so thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any?
I do.
Okay.
I'd like to piggyback on a couple of Mrs. Metzler's. I also have seen and experienced the flexible seating, and it's not a new idea. And so one of the concerns I have is the sort of quid pro quo for the teachers, Dr. Treharn. They have to learn about it before they're allowed to request the furniture. The younger teachers, I'm sure, were taught about it in their undergraduate studies, and the more experienced teachers, I would hope, have come across it in their CEU type learning. So I don't understand maybe the motivation for that, so I'd like to talk about that if we can. And the mental health piece, I'd like to know where we are with community counseling in getting more counselors in the schools, because we're not able to staff them ourselves, clearly. And so community counseling is more than willing to help us with that. And so I'd like to know where we are with getting more community counseling counselors. Because when I was at GPS, I had a great time with Lillie Friday. I stopped in there. She has 80 students on her caseload. And I spoke with Mrs. Herder as well. She and I met out at Austenburg, and they're overwhelmed. They have too many students that they're responsible for, and I'd like to see them get some help. On a couple positive notes, I saw the jazz band, and I wanted to thank long-term substitute Kristen McClure, because the jazz band was outstanding. They were so good, better than I've seen in a couple of years, and my son was in it for a couple of years, so
I'm telling him. I'm telling him you
I
said
know,
that.
right? I told him already. But they were really good. There were some innovative tunes that they played. To be honest, the last time I saw them perform, they were still playing things that I performed with the jazz band, 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, sure.
And it was really good to see some new tunes and hear some cool things. They played a tango, and they were just outstanding. So I wanted to do a shout out to them and to Ms. McClure for that. I did get to go to prom, and that was fun. We had a great time at prom. The students were outstanding. There was zero issues. They were little grown-ups. They were young men and women having a wonderful time and respecting the adults that were with them and respecting the venue at the lodge, and it was just a great time had by all. So I wanted to shout out to everyone, just like Mr. Weatherholt did, all the teachers that helped to make that possible. I had the opportunity, and I want to thank the high school English department. I was here at the high school and met with the English department, as I've been doing, meeting with groups, meeting with individuals since I started on the board, and just to get their perspective on things and have a great conversation. I want to thank them all for sitting down with me. They gave up their group planning time that they plan every week and to meet with me, and I'm really appreciative of that. I learned a lot, and I got to know them better, and I wanted to say thank you. We had a school board conference at ATEC that most of us attended, and it's boring. I won't bore you with the detail. It was mostly procedural things, but I wanted to say that some of that reflected in tonight's agenda, and so I was glad to see that. I went to GPS yesterday, I think, and met with Julie, and I said Lillie Friday already. Miss Patty and I had a great conversation. She is so good with the students, and I reminded her that part of that is because she has fun with them. She sees them in two of their environments that they are the most excited about, library and recess. And so they're already set up to be happier in those sort of environments, and she is just outstanding with them, so that was nice. I got to see Kathy Simmons teaching art to kindergartners, which of course is hilarious, because we use art in a broad term there, but they create the beautiful little artistry of their own, and I just loved it. And my last thing is that I got to see the choir concert last night, and again, outstanding job by Mrs. Mather and the students. It is no wonder they won first place in New York City. They were outstanding. Performance arts is one of the things that has really been negatively impacted by COVID. When people had to choose where to gather and how to do that, Mrs. Mather mentioned to the whole audience yesterday that when they were rehearsing during COVID restrictions, they were 12 seats apart on every side of them, rehearsing in here. And for anyone who knows anything about music, the first thing you have to do is listen. And when you're 12 seats apart, sideways and back and forth, you can't hear each other. And so she's clearly in building years. The new students were a bigger number than the rest of the students combined, but that just tells us that she is rebuilding. And if we get that number of students every year to join the choirs, then we'll be back up to where we were, and outstanding performance art there. And so I wanted to thank them. And thank you all for sticking around. I appreciate that, because I do make a concerted effort to listen carefully to everyone who speaks to us. And I appreciate those of you that stay and listen to what I have to say as well. Thank you.
And I would just like to add that, yes, the ESC training that they put on for us was very procedural. A lot of it was just reiterating things that they've told us in the past. And next Thursday is the middle school choir concert. So, and that will be right here in this room in the evening. So that's all I have for that. Do you have anything else? Mr. Arndt, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay. I recommend the board hold an executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes. Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
We will not be returning for any action. Thank you for coming.